Nobody knows exactly how many shipwrecks are at the bottom of the Great Lakes, but estimates range between 6 and 10,000, many of which have yet to be discovered. But with more than 94,000 square miles of surface area and a maximum depth of more than 1,300 feet, how do you find a shipwreck in all this? This is a Great Lakes Now Deep Dive. If I want to figure out how to find a shipwreck, I need to talk to a shipwreck hunter. So I reached out to Dan Fountain. He's been searching for shipwrecks for more than 30 years. I wonder, when you start out looking for a shipwreck, where do you even begin?
The hunting really begins in the library. Nowadays on the computer to a great extent. We're looking back for records of how the ship went down, newspaper articles, magazine articles. There are wreck reports to various government agencies, which give you anywhere from almost no information to a treasure trove of details.
In 2024, Dan made headlines with the discovery of the SS Arlington, a 244-foot ship that sank in Lake Superior in 1940. But this discovery was a little different from how he usually finds a wreck.
Back in the 20th century, there was a large body of data collected for a reason other than shipwreck hunting. A friend of mine figured out how to analyze it and find shipwrecks with this data. Dan won't tell anyone where that data came from. It's kind of his secret weapon. And it helped him identify an anomaly in the middle of Lake Superior.
Lake Superior is massive and deep, and Dan's boat and equipment could only do so much. So he called the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society. They run the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum in Whitefish Point, Michigan, and they have a research vessel called the David Boyd. Bruce Lynn is the society's executive director.
Dan ended up giving us some coordinates of something that he was pretty sure was a shipwreck. They got up there, put the sonar down, and voila, there's a shipwreck. Doesn't normally work that way.
Like I said before, the Arlington was a special case for both Dan and the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society. Usually the process is much more tedious. Here's how it normally goes.
So let's say we've researched one wreck. We know it's got to be in a certain general area. We'll lay out a grid, and then what we'll do is tow this sonar, which looks like a big torpedo with a cable that has fiber optics in it. And those sonar waves will bounce off the bottom of the lake, but they'll create a shadow if there's something sticking up off the bottom of the lake. The reality is of this type of searching is it could be as much as, 10 hours, 12, 14 hours out on the lake, just looking at the bottom of the lake with this sonar.
So what happens with a wreck once you find it?
We have what's called a remotely operated vehicle. It's like a little robot. It has a tether that goes up to the David Boyd, our research vessel. And using that, we're putting cameras basically down on a shipwreck.
Once they have cameras on the wreck, they can work on identifying it. Sometimes it's as easy as finding the ship's nameplate. Other times it takes a lot more work, like comparing the wreck to historic images or illustrations. They'll use all of this documentation for articles, presentations, and even exhibits at their museum. But sonar isn't the only way that people find shipwrecks. Tamara Thompson is with the Wisconsin Historical Society, and they track shipwreck discoveries throughout Wisconsin's waters.
We are an agency of state government, and we have a catalog of all of the shipwrecks in Wisconsin, actually all of the archaeological sites in Wisconsin.
In 2023, a record number of shipwrecks were found in Wisconsin's waters. 13. The previous record was 4. And it wasn't just dedicated shipwreck hunters finding these wrecks.
We had last year a father and daughter that found a shipwreck while fishing. We've had a number of shipwrecks that wash out of our beaches. And we've had a number of them also that have been discovered through hydrographic survey. And there were kayakers that went out and were just paddling along the islands, and they discovered some wreckage.
And if 2023 was a big year for Wisconsin shipwrecks, 2024, it's shaping up to be even bigger. As of August 2024, they've gotten reports of 30 new wrecks. And it falls on Tamara and the Wisconsin Historical Society to work out a plan to protect and preserve these sites.
What we're worried about right now is quagga mussels. So the quagga mussels themselves will burrow into wooden shipwrecks. And so people who may discover a shipwreck and with the best intention, brush off the mussels to see if there's paint or if there's carvings that are on the wood, are actually causing damage to the wrecks themselves.
People do sometimes move things around on the wrecks, which can damage the vessels even more. And that can impact their archaeological value, especially when you consider that these vessels are often the final resting place of their crew.
A lot of times the sailors themselves were lost on these ships, so they are considered burial sites, and we need to be respectful of that as well.
What do you think we can learn from these wrecks, and what do they tell us about the region's history?
So if we look at each individual shipwreck, all of them are different, and they really tell this larger story of maritime history in this region and really the evolution of it. So you can look at evolution of steam machinery. You can look at various shipwrecks from individual builders and see how they've changed over time.
If you couldn't tell by now, there is a lot of enthusiasm for Great Lakes shipwrecks. When I asked Dan, Bruce, and Tamara about why they think that is, they all talked about the knowledge and history that we can glean from these vessels. But they also mentioned something else. There's a mysterious romance that shipwrecks evoke that plays into our fascination with our own cultural history.
There's always a fascination with the lost things. Things that have been discovered again. They give a snapshot of the way things were in those days.
I think these are stories of history that are a part of our collective history, at least on the Great Lakes. People are curious and mystified and excited to learn more about shipwrecks.
To sit there on the shoreline and to look out and to think about, hundreds, if not thousands, of sailing ships and steamships out on that lake, and what a different landscape it is. It really just sparks your imagination.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out our YouTube channel for even more Great Lakes Now. See you out on the lakes.